Welcome to the NOLA Real Estate Marketing Podcast. My name is Eugenia Lubrano-Ganji, and we are here today with Gregory Wood, who is a social media consultant, and he will help you jumpstart your social media campaign. Well, Gregory, can you tell us a little bit about what you do and what you offer to the agents?
Well, my main interest with agents is to offer them a social media plan, to work with them to plan their social media within a very low and reasonable budget. Now, my experience and my reading about agents is that the typical agent was making about $50,000 a year. They spend about $250 a month on marketing, and of that, they spend only about $75 a month on online marketing. So my goal is to help agents actually do a reasonably good program within that $75 a month to $125 a month, and I certainly think it can be done.
So, social media package, what does that include?
Well, I say social media package. What I really will be doing for them is helping them plan social media. So I'll sit down with them. I'll talk about what their goals are, where they want to go, who are their clients, who are their customers, where do they find them, how do they find them, etc. And with that, I'll help them work out a plan that could either be long-term, short-term, weekly, monthly, etc. So basically, I'm going to act as a consultant for them. With $75 a month, it's probably almost impossible for them to hire, for example, someone to curate content for them or to develop brand new content. So they've got to do it themselves at that price level. And that's my goal, is to help them do it themselves.
Right. And of course, for social media to be effective, the best way to go is to be authentic and to be themselves. So I think what a lot of agents lack is just knowing how to do it. Mm-hmm. And there are trainers out there, and there are YouTube videos out there on what to do, and different consultants providing the service. But I think it's just most people just kind of like deer in the headlights. Where do I start? How do I initiate even just a small campaign, but then grow from that? So what social networks do you cover?
Well, I would tell the typical real estate agent who's doing nothing right now to start with Facebook. The Facebook is huge. It's relatively easy to do. It's relatively easy to put up your own page. You need your own Facebook page. There are things about it that I think a lot of people don't know that are easy to teach them about. For example, I think a lot of people believe that going out and getting a lot of likes for their Facebook page is important. Well, it's not as important as you might think. What's really important is engagement. So one of the things you've got to do is decide or find out what the real interest of your target market is. You've got to define your target market. What are they interested in? What kind of questions do you get all the time? What do they need to know? How do they need to know it? How do they like information delivered to them? And develop a program around that, or a plan around that, to deliver that via Facebook. The reason why I suggest Facebook is because it's so big, because a lot of people are there. Their clients are probably there. Their past customers are probably there. And I think they can get the biggest bang for their buck. At the same time, Facebook is relatively easy to advertise on. And one of the problems with social media, Facebook and Twitter and a number of the other ones, is they're not feeding whatever you post to that many people anymore. I think on Facebook, only about 4% of the people that you want to get to are going to see your content, your post. So you do have to do some advertising, and Facebook's fairly easy to learn how to advertise through.
So what would you say? It seems like you have all the numbers figured out for the marketing budgets. Mm-hmm. I know we have numbers for an agent that makes about $50,000 a year. What would you say the amount of money should be, a percentage of income should be for any agent for marketing that they should set aside?
Well, the average agent spends about 6% of their gross on marketing. The best agents spend about 10%. Or the most successful agents spend about 10%. If I were a new agent, I had the money, I'd spend even more than that to get my name out there, but not too much more. I'd be very careful about where I'm spending my money and how I'm spending it, and seeing what kind of response you're going to get.
So how did you get started in marketing? What got you interested in this field?
Well, I got started in marketing in 1970, so I've been doing it a long time. I became interested in personal computers, believe it or not, in as early as 1980. I remember taking my first personal computer course, and I worked for large companies where they weren't that sophisticated yet in using personal computers, but I remember one thing I did was develop a database, a relational database that increased my sales by 300% one year. So I've always been interested in that sort of thing. I did my first website myself about 20 years ago when I was publishing a magazine for home builders. And, just gradually worked my way into social media. I'm fascinated by it. I like reading about it. I like looking at videos about it. I like trying to figure things out. And it's a challenge. I mean, it's changing all the time. For example, Facebook, because of the changes in the algorithms, it's harder to get a lot of results from organic search. Twitter's something that's hard for me to figure out, to be honest, but I'm getting there. And then I have a pretty good feel for where you should be if you're doing visual content. You should be on all of them, but I think there are a couple of places where you should be more than others.
Well, it sounds like you have a wealth of information from from a long time ago, for many, many years that you've gathered. So I see you being a great resource for agents to speak in person. And with you being an agent yourself, that's also gives you an insight on what's going on in the local market, and also a bigger picture of what's going on in marketing trends as well. What are some, I know you've mentioned some of the challenges, but you being an agent, what do you see as a challenge for other agents in their social media strategy?
Well, I think the biggest challenge for other agents is patience. Social media is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You've got to be consistent with it. You need to do it weekly. You need to have a plan. You need to not get discouraged about it. It does certain things that certainly frustrates me because I don't see results right away. For example, I think one of the basic benefits of social media is building your brand. How do you define that? So you've got to develop a series of metrics that tell you that you're progressing with each particular channel that you go in. And again, I mentioned, we talked about starting with Facebook. I really think that you need to learn one channel at a time. Learn how to do it, figure out how to do it, learn how to decide whether or not it's working for you, and then move on to the next channel. And limit yourself to a certain numbers of channels too.
I was about to ask you, a few years ago, I went to a workshop and social media was just kind of picking up speed. And the general concept was that it was good to do social media and be active and kind of gather your leads off of social media. But if you were not good at it, you may not as well not do it at all. So I don't think it's an option anymore.
Right.
Because if you're not doing social media, you're missing out and you're behind your competitors.
Absolutely.
So I think it's just like the internet back in the 90s when it first came out. Most real estate agents said, oh, it's just a fad, it's going to go away. Same thing with Facebook and Twitter. I think at first we said, well, if we're not good at it, we might as well forget it. We just keep doing our direct mail. But I think it's clear to everyone at this point that it's not going away. It's going to stay. It's here for a while.
It's here for a while, and it's also growing. And I don't think it's that difficult to do it at a certain level. I think that the average agent out there can learn enough about it to develop a plan that will allow them to spend, $100, $150 a month and still get the response that they need to get. Now, if you're a big brokerage, if you have a lot of agents, then you probably should hire someone outside to do it. One of the things that I see lawyers doing, and maybe some real estate agents too, is hiring companies that for $90 a month, they're going to put up 2 posts for you every week. Well, I just don't think that's worthwhile at all for that kind of money, when you can find the content to put up yourself for no money.
So, Greg, can you tell us the benefits of agents working with you on their strategy?
Oh, surely. I think that there's a large number of benefits that any agent can get out of social media if they spend time and effort with it. First of all, I talked before about building brand awareness. That's very important. You've got to define yourself in the marketplace to succeed. I think that over the long run, you're going to increase sales from it. But again, it's a marathon, not a sprint. If there are any problems that some of your customers or clients have had in the past, it might come out in social media so you can address those. The social media is actually relatively inexpensive to do. You can reduce your marketing cost by using it compared to other channels. One of the things that I like about the internet in general and social media in particular is that it levels the playing field. So there can be an agent that's been around forever, but if that agent's not where the clients are today, you've got a shot at getting in there and putting your name out there so that you can be competitive. One of the statistics that just really surprised me when I read it is that something like 70% of new clients only interview one agent before they choose them. Well, to me, that says social media can really benefit new agents out there by becoming just that first person that they interview. I think also social media works extremely well with hyperlocal marketing. And that's what it's all about. And I think that hyperlocal marketing is becoming more and more important to agents. There's very little risk in it, which is another thing I think is important. And it'll just keep you competitive. It'll keep you out there in front of the people who make those decisions, to put money in your pocket.
So how would someone get started?
Well, I think that the best way to get started is obviously to learn about what you're doing. There are certain websites out there. There's certain podcasts out there. There's a book that I really, really like. It's called the No BS Guide to Social Media Marketing. If you get that book and you go through it, it'll provide you with all the worksheets that you need to build a plan. It's just a fantastic book. It's very inexpensive. It's on Kindle. And then I do listen to one podcast, but I don't think it's good for starters, for people who are just beginning. So try and find one podcast that's really basic and it's good for starters. Again, learn one channel at a time. Be patient. You've got to have a plan. The plan should be written. And the other this has gone back to a little bit what we said before, but the other nice thing about social media is that even though I'd recommend you spend 30 minutes to an hour a day on it, you can do it 10 minutes at a time. You're between appointments. You can go back and very quickly look at your insights, spend 10 minutes on that. You can curate some content, spend 10 minutes on that. You can do all the tasks in chunks and get it done over a real estate agent's busy day.
What are some takeaways that we can learn from today's podcast to move forward with the business?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is that content is king. The reason why people are interested in hearing from you is they want information and education. You need to educate potential clients. You need to provide information. And it's not always information that is going to drive a dollar into your pocket right away. So the other thing is to use what's called the 80-20 rule. 80% of what you post should not be about you and what you do. 80% should be educational, should be informational. Only 20% should be direct marketing, where you're talking about a house, for example, that you just listed, where you're talking about a buyer or something like that. So I think the sources are relatively easy to do. As I mentioned to you before, photos are a great source. They're relatively easy to do either on your own or working with a professional. And video is a great source. But you can also just do searches and find information that I think the average consumer would want to hear about real estate. Realtor.com has an incredible number of videos that are easy to put up. So it's not hard to get content, but some of it has to be original, as you mentioned before. And then again, I think that the big channels to be in, besides Facebook and Twitter, are Pinterest, because it's very visually oriented. And Pinterest is interesting. It targets women more than men, just because they're interested in it. Instagram is another one where you're going to find female clients more so than male clients. Google Plus maybe. And I don't know how to use Snapchat, but a lot of people recommend Snapchat also. So I would say that those are the main takeaways. Yeah, as I mentioned before, you be patient. I mentioned before, learn one channel at a time. Write a plan. I think it's very important that you use the free tools that are out there. All of these will save you time. You can curate a lot of content and spread it out to all 5 channels using one free tool. So you'd use something like Hootsuite or Buffer, or I use a tool called Social Pro. There are tools that will give you the insights into how successful your social media program is. The other thing is there are ways to get content done relatively inexpensively. And again, as I mentioned before, the real key and your real goal in social media is engagement. You want to create conversations with clients, potential clients, and even just the marketplace out there.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for all this wonderful free information. And I'm sure you'll have lots of phone calls from people wanting to get their social media strategy established for the new year.
Well, I hope so. And I also wanted to tell you that I'm just really impressed with you're developing your podcast. I think you're doing a great job with your website.
Thank you.
And you're very noticeable online.
Can you tell us how to get in touch with you?
Sure. The best way to get in touch with me is through my cell phone number. It's 985-869-0229.
Thanks, Gregory, for being here. Next time on our podcast, please join us for more helpful tips on how to jumpstart your business in 2017.